Hey friends, this is a conversation with Douglas Rushkoff. This is a conversation that we actually hosted on both of our podcasts, so on his Team Human podcast and my podcast right here. Hope you enjoy it.
It's funny to interact. I feel like we've been in each other's lives for a while, one way or another.
I think I listened to you on the Sea Realm podcast a lot.
Oh my God. KMO is that guy's
KMO.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, because like back in the day, like 2008, 2009, when I was first turning on to all this, it was like Lorenzo Haggerty, the Psychedelic Salon, great guy, and KMO were kind of like my jams.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I weaved through both of those worlds. Yeah. I remember KMO, first time he interviewed me, I had so little time. I was like visiting Portland or Seattle, wherever he was from. It was one of those, or maybe he was in DC.
He moved around, but yeah, he was in Portland for a bit. He was like, I think he was in, he's gone different places.
And we did his podcast, and he picked me, it was like raining, and he picked me up at the hotel and took me to the airport. And we did his podcast like in the car and in the airport parking lot. And I was like, oh, it's like best for last. You know, I was like, oh, I found another member of the tribe.
Yeah. Well, there weren't as many back then. How times have changed.
How times have changed. Yeah. I mean, this is a great moment to launch your movie too. It's weird. It's like something's coming out of the closet. Like, I mean, there's all these great things in this movie, but for some reason, just seeing 100 people lying down to have this experience together, you know, showing up like it's a Taylor Swift concert or something, you know, just showing up and lying down and having whatever experience they're having. It's like, oh, I get it. This is, you know, normal people just healing.
Yeah.
And
I would, I meet a lot of people who like have kind of turned on to this world. And when we say this world, I don't know, let's just say psychedelic world /
ceremonial music, transformation and therapy.
Maybe just they're running out of other options, so they're starting to search for something perhaps that has a little more tried and true history. A lot of people, it's like the last 2 years, and I don't know if that had something to do with COVID or if it's an alignment with technology or all of the above or general collapse, but there's a lot of those folks out there, you know. And like when you were talking about peak oil, I remember as more of a subject back in the day, like not a lot of people were talking about that kind of stuff, or even in the same time, the psychedelic conversation also, it was not cool. You know, it wasn't as trendy as it is now. But I think people, in some ways, it's a symptom, right, of sort of this techno future that we're in, is a sort of desperation for where the ground is, what it means to be human today. And I see it more and more. Yeah.
I mean, and people go into it with that intent, and that's definitely what they get. You know, as I sadly have observed, you know, a tech bro on acid is still a tech bro. You know, it's a less specific, well, certain chemicals are less specific amplifiers than I would have hoped. You know, it's not like, oh, put this in the water and they'll all be enlightened. It's like, oh no, they get new business plans. You know, let's patent this.
There's new delusion. Yeah, I've been actually talking and thinking about that a lot lately, is like this idea of how we can use some of these newer tools responsibly. I was perusing your new book, by the way. Congratulations. Over the last few days, I've been reading it. And I do want to talk about this idea of awe. But what I'm interested in particular is like, what are the ways that we don't fall into delusion? Because as you're saying, it's so simple to do that, right? And I keep coming back to it must be the role of community or the other or some form of witness to litmus test your brand new ideas, you know, to make sure that it's about an us versus an I wholly.
And then I wonder if it can happen through dialogue or reading or engagement, like verbally with another person. Like, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm feeling. But I mean, more and more, and as I experienced a ceremony with your music there, it seemed to be the almost the physical neurological presence of the other. You had a record, and it was coincidentally using language I've been using for the last few years too. You called it like music for the deck of the Titanic.
Yeah, that's my last studio record. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had gotten a few years ago, I was doing this whole big talk, and someone got up and said, "Oh, you just sound like you're singing on the deck of the Titanic as the boat goes down." And I felt so accused. And then I took a breath and went, what's wrong with that's beautiful. If the deck, if the Titanic's going down, what more honorable thing can a musician do than play for the people as it goes down? And it got me into then thinking about, the experiences I had being a sort of a quasi-death doula. And then I know that you've talked about that too, that it's like, you just put your nervous system in service of the other and help them metabolize that, even passively. I think that presence makes a difference.
Yeah. I don't know if that's true, the story of musicians on the Titanic playing music when it went down. I hope it is. But I was riffing on that idea. And there's a lot of layers there to unpack, because you think about, let's say they did, and they knew the demise was coming, and they chose to play music to be like sort of soothe or some kind of doula, or almost like a ceremony itself of like what was happening. I don't know, but that's profound to think that that's happening, because I often feel like that sometimes. You get, and you speak about this a bit in your book, but there's all these like contradictions or frictions that we're up against. And I often feel like, am I part of a solution or part of a problem, or both at the same time? Like when you're inside this wellness industry in a way that is so co-opted by like all the things we see on Instagram and ego, or the tech bro trying to be more techie. It's just like, am I just making that more of that? Or are we actually creating pause? Are we actually creating awe? Are we actually working? Like, what is counterculture? Is this a question I ask myself a lot. And so when they're playing on the deck of the Titanic, that was punk rock in a way. That was them saying like, we're going to subvert, or we're going to bless, or we're going to somehow put a different meta layer on top of what is going on.
Yeah, I'd argue they're counterculture. We're culture, right? Musk and Trump, or the folks who are trying to really stifle the breathing, the connection, the greater organism from manifesting. They're counterculture. It's just that sometimes there's so few of us in real culture that we count as counterculture. But and it's proud. I don't mind the label, but technically I think they're counter. And we're doing the thing. Yeah.
There's something to be said there. There for sure.
And there's also, there's a way to distinguish between like awe and like the vertigo. You could have an experience that you think is awe, maybe, seeing a Marvel movie with explosions, or having that, uncanny valley feeling of looking at a animation or an AI. Is that real? Is that not? And it's something, but real awe is such a warmer media. It's so much more high def. Real awe. You look at a fern plant and it's infinite. It's like that's
wow.
I feel it's a different thing.
Well, tell me a little more about that. Like, how would you differentiate that people know if like say they say I want awe, or if I need awe like a vitamin? How does one cultivate awe?
Well, I wonder. It's funny. I mean, I was responding maybe more to your concern that what you're doing, or we're doing even, is more soporific. That's compensatory. So they get a weekend on team listening to Team Human, or a weekend having a ceremony, and then they can go back, to work at Amazon and destroy the planet. But awe is and it's always possible, right? We're just giving them a breath so they can go back in. But I think it's different, and there are, I feel like more, I mean, bless her heart. I feel like it's easier to do that watching an episode of Oprah or listening to Yanni or something, or Riverdance or whatever. Just having this some peak experience, and then you can go back to the world. But when the work we're doing is trying to be subtle and not like blasting people, not even, and people complain, and in some sense, not even having content so much as just creating context for people. It's, in some ways, they're unsatisfied on a certain level with the work because they're like, well, wait a minute, are you saying this or saying that? Where does Team Human stand on the Middle East crisis? And it's like, oh, no, Team Human doesn't have a stand on the Middle East crisis. Team Human is trying to engender an approach to reality where we can contend with it. We're more of a precursor to confronting the problem than the answer to the problem, which is unsatisfying. But I think awe falls more into that. For me, awe right now is coming from just connecting with other people, even one-on-one. I end up with this experience of awe wherever I feel like I'm part of something greater than myself. And, it used to be like nature, look over the Grand Canyon, you go, oh, I'm part, or you engage with a tree and you encounter the tree for real. But right now, my experiences of awe are sort of come from sort of breaking the social codes that keep me from engaging with a neighbor, just knocking on a door, helping an old lady out of a vestibule.
Yeah, it's breaking the spell. It's also breaking the economy of scale, where we think like it has to be bigger is always better, or more is more. And I think I often see this lens of what you're talking about, like through our hearts, we often know a kind of truth that is very much counterculture. Saying that, like knocking on the door of the neighbor or petting a cat, somehow, part of you is like, this actually is important, or this has value, I should say.
Right.
Whereas we're told
almost
that it's
anything that the anti-awe people call stupid or trivial is probably a pathway to awe, right? So, like J.D. Vance, like picking on cat ladies. It's like, no, wait a minute. Oh, maybe cat ladies have found something, right? Look at these beings. Like anything they criticize, like, oh, I'm gonna try that. Maybe not fentanyl or something, but but most of what they're upset about are the super simple things, and really they are the antidote to scale. So many folks will say, yeah, your solution's about meeting with other people or meeting your neighbors and all, but how would that scale? How would that scale to save the world? It's like, what if scale is itself the problem? Scale's an artifact of the industrial age and British East India Trading Company and scale. No, we don't operate at scale. We operate somewhere else.
Yeah. Another language that's sort of the same as this to me is just creativity, and the role of creativity. And to me, that's a kind of awe, in any form of creativity. Of course, when I'm playing music or just rehearsing, particularly improvising, and so something's kind of happening and it's new. It's like, oh, this is like a new little song that's coming out or soundscape. And that gives me, I guess I could describe it as awe. It's an interesting feeling. I mean, some people call it flow state, but it feels like it's not up here in my head.
Yeah.
And I don't know what is the muse, but to me, that is a fundamental human construct. And when AI, for instance, comes for the creative class in a way, I worry that we're taking away things that were quote unquote hard to do. That is a fundamental part of what it means to be human and to create culture. And I'm like, I don't know what that world looks like when we start to have less of that.
I know. It's funny. There's a scene in the movie where you're just demonstrating how you kind of layer a track. I do a little of this, and then maybe this, and then this will happen and that. And it's doing this thing. And then we realize, oh, so when East is making music, he hasn't necessarily like Taylor or somebody. He hasn't been sitting in his trailer thinking about these lyrics and then go, okay, this will be the bridge and this will be the that. So it looks in a way like, oh, he's just standing there and letting this thing happen. And it's like, yes, and he's prepared 30,000 hours to do that, right? So it looks on the surface like what you or I might do, composing a monologue in real time or getting up and doing a talk for an audience with officially no prep or no outline or no thing. I'm just going to be there, see who these people are, and it's going to and it's going to be. This client will never get it, and they never let me do it. Well, it's not only rarely. I say it's going to be better. I'm going to look at this crowd. I'm going to see what they need, and it's going to be fine. And whenever they let me do it, of course, it's great, but it's a different kind of discipline. It's like a Hamlet sort of, the readiness is all. You bring yourself to the moment and then you deliver. I mean, look at your stuff. You deliver, and it's a different kind of discipline. It's like when I used to talk to people about Judaism and stuff. It was like, really look at what Judaism is, what it was supposed to be. It's not about doing fidelity is not doing the things the way your father and grandfather did it. It in their outward form. It's about wrestling with God in an ongoing way in the moment. That hard part of continuity is doing it live improvisationally for the first time.
It's certainly more exciting. And I think it's more exciting to watch, too, because we're watching creation. We're watching the thing that is creation itself, that is to me what it is to be human. It's about creativity. We are here to create. We do it in micro ways all day long with every thought. But when we do it in these grander flourishes of music or things that take discipline to make into form, it's just beautiful. And there's something about that I think is really needed. So when it's one thing to see it being created by an LMN or something, to see it through AI. It still has some kernel of that, but what we really, really want, what we're hungry for, is actually coming from ourselves. It's only recently we started paying other people to do this for us. We're like, you be creative, and I'll watch, or I'll listen, or I'll buy it.
Right.
That's new.
Yeah, I know. We were creative together. I mean, it was part of. I mean, you go somewhere like Bali, and it's like, oh, there's no professional musicians. No, because we're all playing music. It's like, I mean, there are some for tourists more, but it's integrated into their culture. Yeah, and now, I mean, it's got to make a living. It's a different. It's a different
that's what
world.
I was trying to say before. Like, it's an interesting dance when you want to be subversive to a system that you're literally working with its tools and parts, like social media or something, and it's weird. I mean, it definitely feels like a transitionary time, and it is a daily dance where you're trying to figure out where is that alignment, what are the North Stars, am I lost in the dream here in the Matrix, or am I still can I still zoom out and see it in any way? I think everybody feels that, right? Just in their own way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and and then even sometimes things that give me pleasure then give me a pang of guilt for having pleasure. I released a book in Japan, and the publisher just emailed me, oh, we sold this many copies. It's like more than the U.S. And Japan's little.
Awesome.
And I was like, yay, awesome.
They still read.
I know, that's the thing. They still read. Like England and Japan and stuff, it's like per capita, I'm like 10x what I am in the U.S. in terms of book sales. But it was also like, and then it's like, I'm thinking, that's ego, and I can condemn myself for a while. And then I think, no, I'm happy because I reached 10,000 people in this place, So then it becomes okay again. But I know what you mean, that dance of we're living in and among the metrics of capitalism, and it's hard not to... Yeah. And I got to pay my rent too, So when I see money,
Which
I'm
is
like,
a
oh,
metric.
good, 3 months, 3 months is there.
Yeah, you're kind of hitting the nail on the head on sort of that tricky dance we're all doing. But I do think, in some ways, the kryptonite is when we feel those things of metaphor, of feeling, really, when we feel. It's not something that we have to do. Like it's a natural fertilizer in a way for something that needs fertilizing. And the more we can, in essence, slow that down and let that process be a little more nourishing, as opposed to flipping to the next and flipping to the next, that's just like mutually beneficial for ourselves and the organism itself that we are a part of, like the earth, culture, all of it. That's in some ways
that's
I
why
feel
I was
like
thinking
I don't know how that works. Hey friends, this is a little interruption to let you know about some screenings we have coming up for Music for Mushrooms. We are going to be in Los Angeles. It's the premiere on October 4th and 5th. We're doing these premieres in different cities, sort of rolling them out, but it will be in LA and Santa Monica from the 4th to the 10th. But on the 4th and 5th, I'm going to be there. Rada's going to be there. We're going to have some panels, some discussions, lots of special guests. After that, we go down to Encinitas. David Bronner's going to be down there with us. Then we're cruising over to this big 10-10. October 10th is a national screening event, which means we're going to be all over the country doing events all on the same day. Music for Mushrooms film. There's hopefully a screening near you, especially on October 10th. Go to musicformushrooms.com, find the one near you, get a ticket, bring a friend, bring a family member. Some people have been bringing it's been cool. They're like, I'm bringing my parents because they're like, this is a bridge for us, and it's just beautiful. More at musicformushrooms.com. We're rolling this thing out, and I was glad Douglas Rushkoff could come to the one in New York. And this is how we're connecting. This is how we're making the web weave from the inside out.
In ceremony, it's like a lot of people think, oh, you're going to do these mushrooms and then feel this way and it'll change you and then you go live life. And I'm coming more and more to believe that what you learn in a psychedelic ceremony is that the way you approach the ceremony becomes practice for the way you approach life. So you learn, I've got to just strap in and let what's going to happen emerge. If you try to control it, try to throw your narrative on it, that's all going to fall away. It's going to dissolve. You got to just be there now. That's the way to do it, is to be there. So then how much of that sensibility can you take into real life and move into a state of appreciation for, like, funny, you had a moment in a really happy moment in the movie where the tour, you see the tour bus that you're going to go on for this thing. And it's like, yeah, fuck, man, I'm going to do this stuff on a tour bus. Like fucking, Johnny Cash or, the people that had tour buses, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it was a moment where I was being flown out to do this talk and they flew me business class. I know it's bad for the climate and all, and I bought all the offsets, but they flew me business class and this flight attendant brought me warm nuts. And I wasn't tripping or anything. I wasn't tripping, I promise. Because I put this like warm cashew in my mouth and I'm going, they gave me someone warmed my nuts. I know it sounds gross, but I just had this a sudden moment of like, they're honoring my work. They're honoring what I've done enough to put me in a place where someone is heating nuts for me to
warm
eat.
the nuts. Yes.
Warm the nuts.
Yes, Doug. You made it.
It was, you know what I mean? But it was ridiculous, but also like, wow. But to be able to move through life with that state, it's almost that Dalai Lama, like everything he looks at, he's like, oh, this is beautiful. Oh, a shopping mall. Oh, a telephone.
Yeah. But it's true. It's all creation. And,
But that's the thing, this creation thing, what you're talking about, creation happens in real time.
Yes,
Everybody's
only
creating
in real time.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not what AIs are doing. They're not creating. They're retrieving and compiling. They're doing what formulaic people do. Okay, what's the bridge? What's the this? I mean, yeah, you can use those containers for creativity, but it's not what you're saying. It's not flow state, which is what we're aiming for.
Very different things, completely different things, perhaps ones and zeros apart from each other. I have a question for you about AI and where it's pulling content from. Wouldn't it seem that if it's pulling from the data set of all that is, so to speak, that very soon we would reach this sort of like Ouroboros state of just eating our own tail, where it starts to collapse over time, where there's nothing new, or we have less and less new input because we're pulling from the same set?
Yeah. I mean, that seems to be what will happen, which is a good thing, right? Because then the humans who are left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, because I mean, there's the way the AI people talk about it. I'm glad they finally realized this. Is right, like so we know most of how AI works is it pulls from the existing data set in order to create, in most cases, the most average response. Right, so it's trying to revert each thing to the mean. So write a Beatles song. It's going to look at the whole history of the Beatles catalog and create the idealized average Beatles song. But then the more AI generated content fills the data sphere, the more it's pulling on those averages, right? So so the AI 10 years from now really isn't distinguishing between AI content and Beatles content or whatever it is out there, and getting more and more and more like itself. So yeah, it ends up, you're right, it averaging all the way down to the mean, so that we're getting pure formula. And once we're there, I think then becomes this desperate need for something else. But I think it's already there. You know, I think it started kind of in the auto-tuning. I mean, really, it started
auto-tune. Don't even get me started.
Well, get me started on Equal Temperament, even though. I mean, you go back to that.
Great. Hello, let's nerd on that. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So for people who don't know, a scale in one key is different than a scale in another key. So basically, an A flat and a
on
G
a piano,
sharp,
on a
are
keyboard,
the same
like
note
in the universe,
on the piano.
No,
right?
Yeah.
But they're different in relations. Like if you try to tune a guitar to a perfect E chord, it's going to be different than tuning it to a perfect C chord, right? Because to get the
and just to say that, so it can play in different keys easily.
Right, right. So what they
one
did, like in
instrument
Middle Ages, right?
they have to trim and pull things in and push things out so that it all works. But the relationships are not exactly perfectly mathematical anymore.
Right, they're not perfectly mathematically correct. So then, when you play the two notes, you can hear the like the between the notes.
Yeah.
Without that beat thing, which is fun on some level. It's like gamelan; they do that intentionally. You hear it; they're intentionally out of tune, as it were. But so that's like the first step towards like auto tuning, right? Where you and they do this to singers now. I mean, and that's what I always do in my talk. Could you imagine auto tuning James Brown? Like when he's reaching up to the note, you're taking the soul off the record.
You can do it live now. I mean, that's been around for a while.
Yeah.
But they're running through the front of house like this auto tune.
Right, which is dehumanizing the music. It's making it, I guess, a better product, but it's better product. But
I don't know about
not,
that.
Right.
Yeah,
it's a worse product.
It's making it homogenized. It's kind of an element, and I can't say that word. It's kind of going to the average. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder about this average that we're racing towards. If that is like the eschaton that Terence McKenna talked about, or that is the singularity. You know, it's like the average gets so banal in a way that it forces the humanist to like spring through in some way. Like it's needed because we've reached peak banal, you know?
Right. Well, that's what industrial age was about. One size fits all. Time is money. You know, to get us into that. And capitalism, everything is metrics. Everything is measured. And once you measure everything, I mean, that's the quantized nature of the digital media environment. You're either here or there, yes or no, 1 or 0, or 0.5 or 0.4. They're going to find it's always going to be a click. There's never going to be a smooth analog transition from one thing to another. And I think when we realize there's nothing there is the thing that when it's like the difference between, I used to say this like when I was trying to explain it to high school kids or something, it's like the difference between living on the ticks of the clock and living in the space between the duration of the second is where time actually happens. And I feel like, ceremonial music and ceremony itself is like helping engender a tolerance for living in between those clicks. You don't know. I don't know if it's 5 after 4 or 6. I'm just, it's that breathing space between those notches.
Well, this has too been talked about forever in spiritual terms of like between the breaths is kind of where the juju is, and it's very Vedic or something, and It's true. It's in the space in between. Actually, is where the doorway is to non-duality, in a sense, to where the awe is. It's when the gears stop. When you read the koan, and there's a moment of confusion. Boom, the doorway opens, because it's through feeling. And so, in that way, that is the anecdote. And so, it's true that when we live in a world of ones and zeros, we are conditioning ourselves in a way to a world that is finite, that is most definitely not finite. We're limiting our sense of consciousness, and music in general is wonderful at helping us feel and learn into this space. Remember, really, it's a natural human state. I think we've just grown up in the last decade plus to change the way we interpret the world, largely through technology.
Yeah, and to disconnect from the world. Sort of once your feet are off the ground, that you're not, you look for something else to create the simulation of grounding, and that's numbers and metrics and these lines. But it's like, get your feet back on the ground and listen to the heartbeat the subtler rhythms and undulations. That's what music allows you to create that with others. But then the other weird thing about music, and I was thinking about this. There's a sometimes in your music there's a necessary, almost a sadness. You're accompanying us through our grief as well as exaltation, because we're all, at the beginning of your movie, talk to each person. They're like, I'm worried about my kids in the future. I'm just grieving the end of the world. There's a grief that that comes with experience, that sort of Blake sort of songs of experience. There's a grief, but it made me think back to the original music stuff, which I don't know if it's true, but the music anthropologists I read in college said that after the hunt, they would eat whatever parts of the animal they could, and then they took the parts of the animal that you couldn't eat, like the skin, and they made drums, the bones, and they made things, the gut, and they made strings. And it was in some ways a way of thanking and grieving and acknowledging the life that had to be taken in order for them to be alive. So that music, it feels like it's always had this group component of sacrifice and grief and acknowledgement to it.
It may have played an evolutionary role to create human bonds, and that's also why music developed. All that stuff probably plays a role in it, but it's also, I think, far stranger than that too. Additionally, just that music exists, that you put time, essentially rhythm, and harmony, like we're talking about, just mathematical relationships of tones, really, and that somehow we hear that in a way, and it engenders feeling and meaning across culture, across knowledge of how you can have a PhD in how that shit works, and if you know nothing, we both feel it the same way. And to me, that's very, very special and unusual and weird, and I'm grateful for it.
Yeah.
But we really take that for granted. That
I
is
know.
even
I
a
think
thing.
The PhD can make it harder, because then you're listening to, there's the contrapuntal.
You're thinking
third.
It through, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's what Peter Brook called the deadly theater. Someone who's seen Hamlet 10 times and is watching this production to see how did they do Hamlet, rather than being there for Hamlet. And when it's funny, you talk about, we're talking about AI and we're kind of critical and suspicious. I remember when MIDI came out and synthesizers, even analog synthesizers, much less digitally sampling ones, and then the loop track, and real musicians were so concerned and upset. Oh no, it's going to kill music, and it's not. And I was probably part of that. I hated CDs, at least at first, because I could hear the sawtooth wave of a 40,000 cycle, sample. It's like now, if you listen to a lossless FLAC file, it's like, all right, you got me. I'll go there. But but there's still. Do you ever want to just go Nana Vasconcelos or something? Just have the shells and the. And will you walk around with weird shit? You blow into things.
I'm a hybrid, but I absolutely am thinking more and more about just almost as just because of the creative play space it might push me into. I'm really into boundaries, or I should say limitations. And what colors, limiting the colors you can paint with, because that's actually a creative advantage. And I'm wanting to just explore that more. Mostly it's to shake things up. And so I have a fair amount of tech that I'm using in a ceremony space so that I can do lots of layering and looping and bring in my field recordings that I've recorded. And they're all natural sounds, but yet they're an emulation of that in the space. And that's just been that's the method I was using for the last 10 years or so. But I'm definitely wanting to shake it up. That's why I've been using a piano a lot live, or other instruments to weave in, because I love the mechanical nature, the imperfections of it, and what that brings into the sound.
Yeah. Although it's hard to do it. In the movie, there's this moment where there's like a 60 hertz buzz coming out of one of your instruments or cycles. And you're like,
nature of nightmares going on.
I know. I can't do it. I won't do it. I'm not going to go on. This is going to be compromised. And it's like, to breathe through it, it's like, oh no, this is a new limit that I'm going to. I guess you ended up playing it with the limit, right?
Yeah, and it was rough. Some people wanted their money back. Yeah.
Really? No.
Oh yeah. Because I don't blame them. It's like, if you can't drop in, and that's what you came to do, and it's a technical limitation. Some of it was it could be the space itself. Like, we've had shows that were too cold. Really cold, and that's all you're thinking about. And you're thinking it's just like a hierarchy of needs. You have to have certain things met in order to be able to go to the next step of spiritual introspection or enjoying a concert. And it's obvious, but it's true. There are some limits that's going to supersede us. If there's no power, it's hard to have a show. That's just the way it goes. Which has happened, where the power just goes out and you just start singing into a room, which is a magical moment. Can you do that for 90 minutes? Maybe. Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I have a new record coming out on Friday, October 4th. It is the official documentary soundtrack. So it's cues and music from the film. It's all new music, including 2 songs with Ram Dass. And there's also a new song with V.C. Johnson. He is the voice of the 10 Laws. He's also featured in the documentary. If you've ever been wondering, who is that guy who talks about the 10 Laws? That is V.C. Johnson, my good, dear old teacher and friend in Santa Barbara. But there's 10 tracks, and many of these are new ceremony tracks, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's going to be on Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple, everywhere you listen to music on Friday, October 4th, so you can pre-save it on your favorite platform, and let us know what you think. Let us know what your favorite songs are, and I hope this work will be useful to you. By the way, fun fact, the soundtrack we have found, it's an hour in length, right around there. It's great for a ketamine guidance. It guides the ketamine sessions extremely well. That wasn't the intention, of course. I'm a psilocybin guy, but we've found that to be the case. So, journey on, friends. Let us know what you think about the new album, October 4th.
Right. Well, but what about applying that to life? If there's somebody listening who's in, say, chronic pain, right?
Yeah.
So on one level, they're way down on Maslow's hierarchy of needs because that thing is hurting them, their bursitis or their thing. But I know some people who are in great pain or having a great a disability of some kind who nonetheless are able to metabolize be on many levels at once.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, obviously. If you're coming for a ceremony and it's 12 degrees, it's like, that just sucks.
That's true.
Right? How do you...
True.
But...
There's kind of a weakness maybe in our society, but Ram Dass talked about that, how he was in his later in life was always in pain of some kind, always.
Right, after the strokes and stuff.
Always, yeah.
And the
so
lessons
he just had
that
to deal with
it was tough though. He learned. It was, but boy, that's a challenge. I sure hope doesn't end up having to, I just don't want it to be the challenge I have to do.
I know. I talked to another friend of mine, Lorraine Weiss, who's been on my podcast, and she dealt with various forms of physical pain like that almost all her life. And she just talked about how eventually you have to, I don't know, it's like becoming friends with the pain or transcending it in a way where it just becomes, you're not fighting it. it's just like it's there, you know, and it's not going to be consuming me. I can't, you know, times maybe I'll fall into that, but that would be I would imagine that's like a very high spiritual path, physical pain.
Yeah. But it's sort of what we're all dealing with in one way or another. I mean, it's part of what psychedelics and ceremony help you do. I mean, I've remembered trauma that I had totally buried.
Wow.
You know, real trauma. And it's like, oh, wow. You know, and it's like, is the trauma going to go away? No. Is the conditioning going to go away? No. But is my is my choice of whether to react from that conditioning, you know, to other things in life, that becomes my, you know, my ability. You know?
And there's I'm guessing, was there a layer for you of processing that was beyond your mind? Like perhaps there was a somatic or feeling element that you're just like, I don't know, I do feel differently, perhaps weeks later after having this sort of handheld memory or
Whoa,
there's,
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like there is
Yeah.
a somatic layer here that is maybe a big part of it.
There's just, it's either a somatic layer or it is, and I'll never know, the intelligence or spirit of the mushroom or plant itself. You know,
Maybe it's the same thing.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. Maybe
Yeah.
it is. You know, I had this experience. I know they always sound silly, these psychedelic experiences. It's like, but that's part of the fact that they sound silly to each other when we share them. If anything, is just evidence of how profound they are, because they don't turn into stories. You know, they don't. Because they're real, right? There's no, I mean, that's, or the greats know how to do that or know how to translate it. But no, I had an experience. There's of, you know, myself with my hand on my own 7-year shoulder, you know, accompanying myself through that, you know, and me telling my, 7-year-old or the mushrooms telling me, he just wants to play. He just wants to play, you know, and then all the tears and and it's like, for me, I understand what was going on, and you could talk internal family systems, and there's all these modalities, but it is a guided tour of one's own history, one's own narrative.
Yeah, there is I'm always blown away by the wisdom that is within us, whether it's in our unconscious or in our hearts or in our bodies or in the mushrooms or wherever you want to describe it. All I know is it's deep. Yeah, I had a revelation. I actually did a darkness retreat last year. A form of psychedelic retreat, I suppose, but very like grounded and difficult and human. And one of the things that came up for me was thinking about our bodies that have evolved as a piece of technology for, let's just say, at least 1.5 million years or something in the form it's in, roughly. And in that way, like, it's a very advanced spacesuit. Like, it can speak to us in a way in very, very easily. So easily that we are always just discounting it. Oh, that's just a random memory, or I don't know, that's just a pain in my shoulder, or whatever. Or that's just a feeling. But I'm like, what if these are the communications of something that's actually a deep well of knowledge that we're discounting because we're so stuck in just intellect? And that was because I grew up that way, where I was like, my dad was rational, materialist, atheist. And I'm like, that is the world. And it's been psychedelics have helped break this tough shell in me to realize, boy, there is a lot more beyond just what I thought. And thank God, because the world is really quite depressing and limiting without that. I knew, or I felt that there was more, yet I couldn't find it through reading about it or talking about it or hearing about it. I needed to have an experience like that was so widening that there's nothing to argue with. I just felt it.
I know. And if you argue with it, you always lose.
Good luck.
I mean, you always lose that argument. I mean, that's, way early on in my own career, I had this opportunity to engage with like Richard Dawkins and Daniel Dennett and all of the kind of hard scientist, anti-spiritual people. And I tried to bring up my Wittgenstein or whatever, but how different cultures create systems of meaning and they're real, and you're from a culture of evidentiary meaning. That's the way you make meaning, but there's other way, and they're just, poo-pooed it. But they're always going to win the argument because arguments themselves come from the environment of, evidence and fact-based, deductive reasoning. And we're talking about something experiential rather than something reasoned.
Yes.
And it ends up being more real. I mean, I love telling, doctors, nobody even knew about the gut biome till recently, or that there's more of them than there are of us. We might just be a medium for them, and what do they have to say? They're older, they're more complex, they have thousands of times more information.
Yeah, it may be that part of the solution to weave our way through this predicament we're in is about a creative explosion. It's almost like we need a flourishing of creativity in order to expand upon where we've been. And as a way of working with technology and the limitations that we're feeling, the constrictions. And that is not at all the mainstream narrative, but I actually hope and feel intuitively that that's how we regain our humanness.
Yeah, and I mean, the trick is a lot of people, everybody feels it. You meet and engage with a true MAGA person, right? The MAGA impulse, I know it manifests as, hate or racism and all this other stuff, but they feel so that this civilization has disconnected them from ground, so they think, oh, let's go back. And I understand we all go back in a ceremony, you go back and retrieve.
Right.
I understand what they're aching for. It's just even, look at the early Nazi movement. They were talking about getting back in the forest, having their kids, go and do camp and be with trees and reconnect with eros and sexuality. And, the impulse is there. It's just so easily,
Manipulated,
hijacked.
Very easily. I mean, no doubt it's easy to manipulate any of us. Extremely easy. But I love that you're talking about this sort of core natural impulse for connection, really. And we started this conversation, we were talking a little about what we're seeing are symptoms of the pressure and the systems that we're in. Yeah, so they're almost like natural symptoms for us to be longing and desperate. But I have this song with another spiritual teacher called Muji, and he has this really great line in the song where he's like, when we're desperate, we discover. And it's true. It's true. These are the ways that we actually make change, often through near-death experiences, bankruptcy, divorces, times of desperation. And you could say, on the face of it, pick your crisis around the world. We are facing many desperate crises.
Right.
And so it's an opportunity, maybe the only way. Perhaps we've engendered this situation to change.
Yeah.
And
Definitely.
these doorways are here. And it's okay, and you wrote about this in the book. I was reading that ending. It's kind of what are we going to do with this critical juncture? Are we going to become, in a sense, completely inside it and lose these abilities? Or is this going to be the way that we can create new ways of thinking,
reclaim our humanity and our creative energy? I mean, for me, just personally, over the last year, I realized I had, painted myself in a real corner, and it was I really had to either choose to just kind of wind down, I'd done it, and wind down and just kind of die, or, make some major, difficult, super painful life changes, and so it's been in some ways the most painful 6 months of my life, but also ultimately the most liberating, to really, and I could sense, you got there too, even they showed it in the movie, where you realize, healer, heal thyself. That that you had. I got to do a session. Your wife sat for you, and you did a session, and that you have to. I mean, and partly I think it comes from being from playing the role of the musician in the society, or for me, playing the role of the this verbal engager, intellectual.
I know what you
we're
mean, man.
operating slightly at scale, which is treacherous.
Yes. And you don't want to be like a parrot of yourself. Like one day you wake up and you're like, am I just repeating things you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Like
Audience capture and people
I'm
like
terrified
it.
of that. God, well, you see it in huge amplified forms with like a Russell Brand or Alex Jones. I mean, there's many of them where that is the ultimate snake eating its tail, manipulating the human psyche for power and attention, where you act, or Trump himself, like completely losing yourself probably multiple times over till when your own bullshit becomes a true reality for you. And you don't even realize anymore what you've cultivated, and what you've allowed to take over.
And how can you when you've got, in his case, a couple 100 million people who are positively reinforcing it?
A lost cause, but
I can get 10 people coming up after a talk saying that they liked it. I'm like, oh my God, the world gets me,
Yeah, and that's,
I can't imagine millions.
Imagine it is dangerous in a sense, and so it's like it's challenging when things are scaling to like, how do you work at scale and remain true to the thing that was the initial impulse that both you and the others, that's the thing we're resonating with and want to connect with. Some kind of true human thing, and not be a parrot of it.
That's why I think we kind of we don't ever reach true scale. I mean, it's great that 10,000 people in Japan bought my book, but it's like, if like Stephen King or Malcolm Gladwell heard me talking, they'd be like, "Oh, isn't he cute? He sold 3 books and
It's
he
all
thinks
relative.
he's like so important."
Yes.
Right? So it's like scale for me is like, is the jazz stage, not the main stage. It's like I got scale from I'm allowed to play in the club. I can get in on the quiet Thursday night, and people are going to show up, and I can stay almost alive doing it with some teaching and other stuff on the side. I can do that. That's like that scale. I don't think that the scale that we're at is quite as dangerous as if,
No, but it's insidious. It's the same. It's the same poison. So
it is the same poison.
The fact that we're even speaking to it is better than not, because I think I kind of, for some people, it's just a drug. I mean, you never stop and be like, wait a minute, is this a good cycle for me to keep taking this drug? Is there a way I can change my behaviors and try to put some like self-awareness on it or witnessing? But look, it is not easy to be a modern human. We are being experimented on and hijacked and manipulated by the best of the best, and now like non-human minds as well.
Yeah.
And it works.
It does work. And it's all
new.
intended to dehumanize and to disconnect us from our power so that we're, slaves to the system.
And we're fully in it.
Yep, exactly. This is why even recently it was part of my whole break. I had to go, look, I'm not going to do a friggin' podcast every week and a Substack post. The platforms are begging for a certain rhythm. And it's like, that's not my natural ebb and flow. And I'm not going to, if it costs me in utility value or productivity, then so be it. Yeah. I want my work to be emergent rather than, on demand.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I just took a break from my podcast for the summer, which is the first break I took in 5 or 6 years since starting it, doing it weekly.
Me too. Same summer.
I was kind of just like, what am I doing? I should just be really conscious about this. And I only really brought it back 2 weeks ago because we're launching the film. And I was like, I do enjoy it, but I was waiting for like figuring out like, how do I want to navigate this space? And it's certainly going to be at a slower cadence. I know that much because why not? you know.
Because why not? And people have more than enough. We both wrote about information overload. You talked about information sickness. Like, there's got more than enough information. I remember when I first started my podcast, Stephen Bartolome, as a musician, was the producer. And he's like, dude, don't do it every week. People need 2 weeks to even just digest it. They're complaining that the new episode's coming up before they fully metabolize the last one. I mean, imagine that. That was a different era. That was 5-6 years ago. But I'm going back. I'm going to try to do 2 a month, and not even at the same every other Wednesday. Does anybody but the algorithm care?
No one's really keeping track of that. That's for sure. You still get a gold star, Doug. Yeah, I'm on exactly the same page. And I think that's actually part of, not to pat ourselves on the back, but that's part of the medicine of what this new world needs is like, again, the economy of scale. It's not always about speed and more. Sometimes it's about slower. Another quote I love from Bayo Akomolafe is that, these times are urgent. Let us slow down. And
I love that. I love that
poetry
from my world. From my world, it's Stanislavski, the acting teacher, said if you're directing a scene and it's boring, tell the actors to slow it down. It's like it's perfect because then what it is will emerge.
It's just a weird time. I think it is a real privilege to be in this time, but I do think it takes bravery. And, I've always appreciated going back 15 years ago, reading your words and mostly hearing them and feeling that kind of courage to just say, wait a minute, what's going on here? Or like, let's talk about this or that. And that's needed more than ever now. And it's tough for people to do, because you're going against the tide.
Right. And there's we're both doing the same thing from different sides. I'm kind of just going like, since when are things like this? Wait a minute. Hold on here. Hold on. And your work, you just kind of, everyone just do a ceremony with the Music for Mushrooms album, and you'll know what I mean. It's just like you ease into this other place, and you're just, oh wow, it's like you, and then all the social constructions of reality become. They kind of fall away naturally. I'm like, let's challenge this. This is not real. This money is not real. This is a printed piece of paper. And it's just like, when you move it to the state with your music, it's like, I can't imagine you put a dollar bill in front of somebody. It's just, you laugh at it. You'd be like, oh my God, what have we been doing here? Because you find, the more essential value. So I feel like we've been, going into the same thing. I've been doing it a bit more didactically, and you've been doing it more experientially. But both are required. It's like, what do you read after? What should you read after your Music for Mushrooms trip? Well, read Rushkoff. Or it's like, what do you do about? I've read Team Human. What do I do now? Oh, there's a ceremony I have for you. It's like you kind of need both elements in one's path.
Thank you to our Patreon members who support this podcast. Patreon is an excellent way to support the project in general, but it's pretty cool. Like when I'm recording this tonight, in a couple hours, when I'm recording it, that is, we're doing our once a month council gathering. We do this on Zoom, where we get together and witness and see what we're scouting out there in the world, what's alive in our lives. And then I do a guided meditation just for us, with music, usually unreleased music, that's customized. And then we have a library of these that you can go back to and listen to that's just for the council. It's also a place that I get to share unreleased music, live sets. It's really one of the only places I can share that stuff, and I'm so grateful to have that outlet. More than anything, it's a community. So if you'd like to support, you'd like to see about joining, go to patreon.com/eastforest and see if the council is for you. And thank you to all of our council members of different shapes and sizes and tiers. It means so much to me that you're willing to support this project. Thank you. I've just been kind of answering my own pain. Really, like what were the things that I needed? And I think I really needed a balance to all that. kind of materialistic thinking. And so
Yeah.
I needed wonder. I needed deeply emotional music because it made me feel things that I just want to feel. Like I just want to go into these spaces over and over again. I think you called it grieving, and another word I often comes up for me is yearning. And it's a yearning for what I know we are. And I'm just trying often to fall into these musical spaces where I'm like, where is that feeling? There it is. And then we just swim in that space for a bit. And it's like a room that we can all be in. And something can speak to us in that space that is most definitely larger than an individual, but at the same time is all of us. And boy, does it feel good to hear that message, to feel that message, because it's a reminder. You know, if anything, it's a reminder of what is. And we need that these days. We really need that so we cannot get lost in the details.
I mean, like Music for Mushrooms got recorded as part of a live session.
Yeah, so basically I have ceremony albums like the Music for Mushrooms album, which now is a film, the one we're talking about that you saw. And I have a series called a Soundtrack for the Psychedelic Practitioner, and that was the first one. And I'm about to release the third one, which is a 6-hour album. Essentially, it's the soundtrack for the film. It's like the Big Brother version, and or Big Mama version. And those are recorded live and improvised in ceremonies. But I do studio records too, like the Music for the Deck of the Titanic. And that's just a different way of playing around. For me, I'm still working from improvisation, but you do it over time. Maybe there's collaborators, other musicians, you know.
Right. But when you're doing it, I mean, with the people in the room, what you're doing is influenced by the experiences that are happening.
100%. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's kind of the point.
Right.
And I remember thinking, like, when we released that record in 2019, it's a 5-hour record to guide a journey, Music for Mushrooms. It's like, well, will this work? Obviously, it's been codified and recorded, and it was in this moment. And of course, it works in the moment. But will it translate in this locked form, so to speak?
Right.
And all I can say is it does translate just from what I hear from people. And there's some kind of ineffable, almost magic or synchronicity that's going on that I can't explain.
Right. I mean, I would say that it probably helps that it wasn't like one person's journey, right? But that there was a lot of people, so that you're not to be like AI, but you're metabolizing an kind of an average of a group. So you know what I mean? So you're not going to end up like bringing one person's psychopathology and amplifying it in all of us who listen to the record. You know, it ends up being kind of a healthy average, psychic average.
Yeah, and that's also like there is some kind of specialness and power when we come together in groups to do, for lack of a better word, healing or intentional emotion. That's so human, and that's something we do like when we go to a concert. I think we're like looking for that, and it's also something you could say we look for in tribalism of like a MAGA rally or whatever, like or even a Kamala Harris rally. You're looking for that sense of tribal connection. But one of the reasons we're releasing the film in theaters is because that is just sort of punk rock to what's going on. It's like, yeah, come to a theater, meet the others, feel together. Like there's actually an alchemy to that is important, I think. And that's not something we do as much anymore.
No, I tell you, this is the premiere of your movie in New York City that I went to was like my first night out since I've gone through this whole life transition thing.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. But then to go into the lobby and see all of these people I feel like I kind of left behind before I went into this tunnel of mine. They're there, and their faces, and even new people, but who've been on this similar journey. It was like such a great, for me, a find the others moment. I was like, oh my gosh. And there was this dude there who was telling this story about he went on this, like, he went to Galapagos for a couple of weeks and was like sitting with the turtles and like journaling for all the turtles and singing to them. And I guess he tripped and whatever. And then finally the turtles spoke to him. And I was like, what did they say? And he said, slow the fuck down, man.
Such a turtle joke.
It is, but it's the dude. It's his experience.
It's
I was
beautiful.
Like, oh, man. But I just had the best. I mean, I love the movie and the music and all that, but it was reuniting with the community of people who are on this journey together. Was so reinforcing, just to be there and real. It's like,
yeah, no, it's huge. That's what you're saying is actually really important. And I think actually a lot of people felt exactly what you're saying, because I heard it from others about like kind of feeling like we've retreated in a certain way personally, and a sense of wanting community and a kind of return and a reaffirmation in a new way. Like, here we are in a new time, a new era. What does this all mean? These intentions, these energies, these hopes we have now moving forward. And it's useful to feel that in a group or see that and reignite those feelings.
And I also like, all these plant medicines and things kind of being taken out of the news stories of the moment are about, medicalization and legalization and the fight over this and that. And it's like, that's not even addressed in the film. It's just like, whatever. Here's 100 people lying down. It's like, we're not even going to, it became so normal. It was like, oh, you're going to go to see your kids playing a soccer game on Saturday, and then on Sunday, you're going to go to this farm and lie down and have a ceremony.
Yeah, that was very intentional. Trying to, make it about the emotion and the humanness and the groundedness of all this stuff and this work, and not so much about all the ideas and the advocacy. Because first off, other people are telling that story, and we have to choose what story we want to tell.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make it one that builds bridges and is like about, like, this is, you see a lot of different people in the film, and hopefully you see yourself in there somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And there are the people, I mean, God bless them, who are working on the various legal channels or ceremonial. It can be religious exemptions or medical ones. I mean, there's good people working on those, and they're kind of a different kind of podcast, different kind of movie. And it's nice. It's nice to be able to forget about that part for a while too. And
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And so you need to rest. We need to balance again with feeling, and not to discount that. Like, it's a balance, man, of what it means to be a human being. And it's like, we need to nourish these parts of ourselves and learn how to listen.
Yeah. So what's up for you? So you're going to go on tour? Like with the movie?
It's happening right now. New York was the premiere, and like at this moment, I got to go here because I'm going to take off, and we're showing it all over the country. So, musicformushrooms.com. You'll see hopefully a theater near you. We're adding them every week, and then playing some concerts around that too. And it's fully in action at this moment.
I know, it's great. It's great to see that happen. I'm just starting, I think, hopefully on a movie. That's
oh, cool.
Kind of like, it's sort of like me trying to talk the world down off a bad trip.
Dig it.
Sort of Spalding Gray, like, monologue-y thing. But seeing your movie made me feel like, oh, this is possible, especially if you're, again, not worried about scale, but just creating an experience, building a community, that it's real. It's powerful. It's powerful when it's just don't try to be powerful, and it ends up being.
Wow. That's a head trip right there. But yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you can do it, man. I just say, as long as you're having fun with it, keep going, and always use that as the guiding light. Like, where's the piece that sort of excites you, and just keep going in that direction.
Yeah. And have brilliant partners. I mean, you have great partners.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. We have amazing people. It's a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
A lot of amazing people worked on the film.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Well, dude, it's so great to meet you. It's so funny. I told my therapist, I was, gonna talk to the music or mushroom guys. And he goes, East Forest? He's like, he's the man.
Oh, that's sweet.
And it was like, I was just love it was like, I felt like it was one of the first times my therapist was like impressed with me, like that I'm an important writer because I'm going to be talking to East Forest.
Maybe I'm big with therapists. Yeah, I don't know.
It's great. Well, because so is the sort of the treatments are getting big with therapists now because people are doing, in 10 hours they're getting 10 years worth of psychotherapy. They get ready to actually do psychotherapy after they had the experience. But great. Well, look, be healthy and well on the road. Eat well and get your sleep. I've been on book tours and I get like sick every time. Yeah. Take your medicines, your wellness formula.
I will do that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you're alive. Look, and you're relatively close. When you're back, do you live on that farm that the guy has?
No. That's where I used to live in New York City, but that was a long time ago, and that's where we sort of started doing a lot of my early work. It's a plant medicine church now. But I live out in Boise, Idaho, in southern Utah.
Oh, you still do? Yeah.
Yeah, I escaped New York. So.
And did you still work with that drummer guy who lives out there?
Which one? In Boise?
Yeah. Do you remember
Jens Karas?
Yeah. You were telling the story about how you had to do the record. You didn't know if there's a drummer, and then all of a sudden, it's like,
he's 2 blocks away. Very amazing.
Great.
He does amazing music. Jens Karas. It's a great singer-songwriter too.
Yeah. No, amazing. Oh, good for you. Boise, man.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, I'll come out to you.
Yeah, it works for now. It's good.
Great. All right. Well, travel safe. Thanks so much for being on Human and being on Team Human, and thank you for having me on yours. This is
thanks for the mutual episode. It's fun.
Yeah. It's beautiful to do.
It's
It's efficient, right? It's 2 totally different audiences, and like for the 6 people that are overlapped, you're like, sorry.
I think there's more overlap than you think. So I think hopefully people are going to be now new into your world because I've been listening to you for a long time and there's lots of overlap. So.
Oh, great. Beautiful. All right. Well, more soon. Namaste. Thank you. And travel safe.
Thanks, brother.
When you witness a dark thought that isn't going to get you anywhere, you witness it and love it. You love your dark thought. We are all truth. The oneness of the universe is love.